Good morning, everyone. Wanted to just start the day off and welcome you to, now I believe this is our 5th annual Ripon's Return on Investment panel. My name is Nick Spaeth. I'm a class of 2004 graduate and currently serve as the president of the Alumni Association Board of Directors. Thank you for coming to this event. We are excited to see a full house. And without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to our 13th president, Dr. Zach Messitte, who will be kind of running the show here. So, Zach, if you like.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick. It's so busy. I've buttoned my suit the wrong way. It's been a busy few days, an exciting few days, and this is going to be a very exciting weekend. So we're thrilled that you're all here today. This is a very special event. You know, we hear a lot in the media and other places from our politicians about the value of a liberal arts college education. And the people you're going to hear from today, and I'm going to do introductions and then ask them an opening question and also turn it over to you, are really proof positive of the importance of a liberal arts college education and the idea that you will succeed with the kinds of things that you learn here at Ripon or at institutions like Ripon around the country. So let me introduce each of them, and then I'm going to ask them an opening question and have them respond. And then after that, we're going to move quickly to your questions in the audience as well. So let me introduce them. Sitting to my immediate left is Dina Wilmore, class of 1967. Dina is the immediate past chair of the Ripon College Board of Trustees, and she served in that role from 2003 until 2009. She joined the board in 1993. She's a retired partner with Wellington Management Company. Let me just tell you a little bit about her background. After graduating with a degree in philosophy, right, not economics, philosophy, Dina joined Wellington as the youngest and only woman in the partnership that took the company, and then a publicly traded company, private in the early 1980s. Her first job was secretarial work at the company. Over 3 decades, she went from typing research reports to the executive committee to becoming the director of marketing and eventually partner of one of the largest investment advisory firms in America, Wellington Management Company. She was instrumental in forming the Wellington Management Company Charitable Fund, which supports programs to improve educational opportunities for disadvantaged youth. After retiring from Wellington, Dina began focusing her energies on the nonprofit sector, including raising funds for a women's shelter by riding her bicycle from California to Florida. She has remained connected to Ripon as a longtime supporter of the annual fund, endowment fund, and Ripon College athletics. She's a member of the college's Leadership Alliance and a partner in the Legacy. Last year, and I know many of you who are here were in the audience, she received the Medal of Merit, Ripon's highest honor bestowed upon an alumnus alumna for distinguished professional achievement, exemplary personal qualities, and near lifetime service to Ripon College. Dina lives in a small town in western Massachusetts, Buckland, Mass. She lives with her partner, Martha Thurber. She is, and this is a quote from her, is a, quote, part-time gentlewoman farmer with cows, hay, and chicks, and the necessary farm toys that go along with this life. Like that. Sitting next to Dina is Scott Dix, class of 1974. Scott is the managing partner at Selling Forensics Group, a business consulting firm that manages, that examines processes, methodologies, and behaviors that drive both the management process and the buyer-seller relationship. They provide services that focus on management metrics and processes, adapting to shifts in buyer behavior, so selling approaches, sales management, this type of thing. Prior to this, he had been the senior manager at American Sales and Management Development, and this company deals with information infrastructure, business support for customers inside the information lifecycle of a company. Scott has been a Ripon trustee since 2000. He's served on numerous committees. Before serving on the board, he was also on the alumni board from 1989 to 1999, and then has served on the board of trustees as an alumni trustee. He is a partner in the Legacy. He played football here at Ripon, was also a member of the Phi Delta Theta fraternity. I've also had the pleasure of meeting Scott's wife, Linda, who I'm going to call upon at some point in my time here at Ripon to teach me about budgeting and how to at a higher education institution. And they have graciously hosted and attended many of our events in the Madison area. Linda, of course, also class of 1974, and I saw Linda walk in. Where is Linda? There she is, class of 74. She has held such roles as Dean of Administration for the School of Human Ecology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and is an administrative auditor for the Wisconsin Legislative Audit Bureau. And Scott and Linda are in Middleton, Wisconsin. Catherine, or actually let's keep going in order. Rosalind, yes, Rosalind, and your last name is pronounced Ebel, is that right? Ebel, is currently a technical communicator at Epic, an electronic health record software vendor that serves domestic and international healthcare organizations. She is a self-described teacher by vocation and wanderer at heart. Ooh, me too, I am too. Who spent a year and a half working at private language institutes teaching English in Busan, South Korea. And while there, she wrote and published her first book, a textbook designed for university-level English language learners. Rosalind has also worked as a freelance writer and as the operations manager at the Wisconsin Institute for Learning Disabilities, Dyslexia Incorporated. Rosalind also holds a master's degree in professional writing from Illinois State University. So while she was at Ripon, she sang in the choral union. She was also a member of the Student Admissions Ambassadors Club and graduated with the distinction of being Phi Beta Kappa. She participated in alternative spring break experience in 2003 when she set out for Naples, Florida with Habitat for Humanity and worked on 15 homes for needy families. She has said that this trip was by far one of the most positive and rewarding experiences she had at Ripon. She was an English and Spanish major when she was here and was the recipient of the Professor Ethel E. Lyon Class of 1912 Award in English in the spring of 2006. She was also one of 4 students selected for the U.S. Department of Education's TRIO McNair program, Summer Research Scholars Program, where she spent 10 weeks conducting research related to the works of the 20th century American authors at the University of New Hampshire at Durham. She is originally also here from Wisconsin, and she lives now in Fitchburg. Our final panelist is Catherine Schultz, class of 1989. Catherine serves as senior advisor in the State Department on nonproliferation and security issues as they affect India and Pakistan. She also serves as the team leader on South Asia in the U.S. Department of State's International Security and Nonproliferation Bureau of Office of Regional Affairs. She leads the department's work on diplomatic responses to specific bilateral and regional weapons of mass destruction and proliferation challenges. As such, she leads department efforts to develop and implement policies to foster a stronger non-proliferation partnership with India and Pakistan. Catherine has been at the State Department since 1999 when the U.S. Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, known as ACTA, merged into the Department of State. Her efforts at ACTA and initially at State were focused on the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the North Korean nuclear weapons issue, and her efforts to replace the arms disagreement with a permanent peace agreement via the 4-party talks. She is the recipient of numerous awards, and I could go on and on about Catherine. While she was here at Ripon, she majored in politics and government and minored in music. She has also completed a postgraduate intelligence program at the U.S. Joint Military Intelligence College in Washington, D.C. She's an avid singer, involved with 5 choral ensembles in the Washington area, including serving as the founder and director of the State Department's own chorale ensemble. Pretty impressive, this group of 4. Let's give them a round of applause. So I'm going to start with the opening question, and then how are we going to do this? The mic will, they'll just shout it out, how will we do this in response? Pass it, we'll pass it to them? Okay. So here's my opening question. All of you had different majors here, different interests: philosophy, politics, government, football, fraternity, music, sorority. What has all this done for you over the life of a career? You've had all these experiences at Ripon that seemingly don't relate to what you're doing in your careers. What does this provide you, this background?
how's this? Is that okay? I think the biggest thing that I got out of Ripon College was a love of learning. And when I was thinking about this, when I was growing up, when I was in grade school, I loved school. Loved it. Loved going to school every day. Couldn't wait for the summer to be over. And then, and I think this is typical of girls and young women, I got into junior high and senior high. And raging hormones, confidence, perhaps not great teachers, maybe think about school in a different way. And it wasn't a love, it wasn't an excitement. Luckily, my family had a history of college, at least. No, that's actually not true. My father was the first one to go to college. My mother never graduated. But college was in our blood. We knew we were going to college. And coming to Ripon, a small school with outstanding teachers. You know, the backgrounds of the faculty at Ripon today and when I was here was as good as any school in America. And the love of teaching absolutely changed me and opened up doors that I didn't even know existed. When I was a freshman, we had required courses for almost 2 years. We had to take science. We had to take economics. We had to take languages, unless you comped out, which I did, which was a mistake. And it was because of that that I took a philosophy course. Never would have taken a philosophy course. And I loved it. I loved it probably because of the professor, but because he was a great teacher. And this was Seal Doss, and he was new to the college then too. And I ended up majoring in philosophy. And my parents are saying, oh my gosh, what's she doing majoring in philosophy? What in the world is she going to do majoring in philosophy? But, and it was true, it was difficult with that as my degree. But it did, as I grew older, I realized that, in fact, philosophy is probably the best degree one can major in. Because one doesn't know what you're going to do when you get older. You think you do. But in truth, you don't know where your life is going to lead you. And philosophy, of all the disciplines, teaches you critical thinking. And writing, because you write a lot in philosophy. And it's that critical thinking that allowed me to adapt to the situations that I was presented with. And I was extremely lucky to land in financial services, which is one of the most lucrative for employees industries that you can be in. And from that, I had just a tremendous career, very exciting, wonderful, and extremely successful. But it's that liberal arts education and the luck that I ended up in philosophy that I think gave me a tremendous base for the rest of my life.
Scott, what about you? What in your experiences here at Ripon really helped you in terms of developing your career?
Yeah, I look at, when I return on investment's an interesting concept, right? Financial, business, et cetera. And as I was thinking a little bit about what Ripon has done for me, I looked at return on investment in my life. Skills that I actually learned. I met my beautiful bride, Linda, here. I've met friends that I still, to this day, I see some of you out here in this audience that I would consider lifelong friends of mine. The teamwork and the camaraderie that came out of the life experiences here at Ripon have fulfilled my life immeasurably. I could talk for hours about that. But I also got a return on my business career. I came to Ripon from a very, very small farming community in downstate Illinois. And part of the reason why I chose Ripon was because it was a small school. Now, I found out that small is a relative term. My first day here, I met what would later on become a fraternity brother of mine. He graduated from Lane Tech High School. His graduating class was bigger than my entire hometown, all in. You know, coming from a small community, you know, I didn't struggle academically. I enjoyed a wonderful career in athletics. Was a budding rock musician.
I think we all were budding rock musicians.
I'll do my rendition of Proud Mary later. But when I came to Ripon, I found out that I was relatively ill-prepared for the rigors of a college education at the level that Ripon teaches it. And if it wasn't for the faculty and some people who were outside my discipline, I'm a lab rat. I spent all my time in Farr Hall and Todd Weir in biology, psychology, and chemistry. And it was an English professor who reached out to me and said, put his arm around me and said, let me tell you how to study. And once that happened, my grades improved. I got my head wrapped around the content of the educational experience a bit quicker. And I've seen Doc Hyde here, and I should tell a little story about, I learned Latin when I was in high school. I got here, and I had a little trouble wrapping my head around German. And in fact, I struggled with it quite a bit. And my problem was that I eventually got my head wrapped around the language well enough to actually use it later on in my business career. My problem was that at Ripon, it took me longer than a semester to get my head wrapped around the concepts of that semester. Eventually, later on in my business career, I was in Munich. I was teaching and running a workshop for Deutsche Telekom. And I had practiced the introduction to this workshop in German. Got out my dictionary, I rehearsed this thing, I had it nailed. And the last thing I did before I turned the workshop over, I asked everybody to go around the room and introduce themselves to me. And there was about 35 people in the room. Got about halfway around, and one of the district administrators was sitting in the room, and she stood up and she goes, Herr Dix, I think this workshop will go a lot better in English. So obviously I didn't have my head completely wrapped around that part of my educational experience.
You know, I want to stay with this international theme because this is one of our, and let me bring in Rosalind and Catherine too. Talk about the international component here a little bit of being prepared as you go out of Ripon and into the really great wider world.
Okay, well, I also come from a small town, but unlike Dina, I come from a family whose parents didn't go to college, and a low-income family. And when I came here, I didn't know what was out there. It's as simple as that. I did not know what existed. I had no exposure to the opportunities available. And for me, the biggest thing coming out of Ripon were those opportunities and knowing that those are not necessarily reserved for other people. They're for you. You see other people doing good things and making these remarkable achievements in their lives, and I thought, oh, that's not me. But then through my course of my education here, that is me, and that's each student here gets those opportunities and those chances. I think that's the biggest thing for me. And when I thought about return on investment, I thought a lot about how I invested in my education, how I invested in my career, but also many people invested in me to get me there. I wouldn't have been able to do all these wonderful opportunities that I have without other people, professors, faculty, staff, giving me those chances. So internationally speaking, when I was at Ripon, I got 2 chances to go international and 1 opportunity to go kind of domestic travel that really made the difference and paved my way for later on going abroad again. Those were my study abroad time when I went to Sevilla, Spain for 4 months. I did a short-term Maymester after I graduated, actually, for 2 weeks to Jamaica. That Peace Studies Maymester, I think, is still going on. And then another opportunity I had to have a research fellowship in New Hampshire as part of the McNair program. So those were the 3, I would say, big things. There were a lot of little stories and a lot of other things that had to happen, but those 3 major events kind of got me to where I was, where later, after I graduated, I had a job. It was a great job. I loved it. I was working in literacy and helping people learn to read. It was wonderful. But I also had this other compulsion to go abroad, and so I found a job in another country, and that was kind of why I'm sitting here today.
Catherine, so you went right to Washington, D.C. pretty much after Ripon, and right into the field that you, at least in some form, that you're in today, right?
Yeah, I've been extremely blessed in that way. After I graduated, went back home, did some temp work for 3 months, and then interviewed for and received a fellowship called the Herbert Scoville Peace Fellowship, which I highly recommend. Actually learned about that fellowship when I was at Ripon. There's the Wisconsin Institute for the Study of War, Peace, and Conflict Studies, and they had a call for papers, for student papers. So I thought, my senior sem fits the theme. So I actually offered and presented my senior sem on international problem solving. It was the case of transboundary air pollution at this seminar. And there I found some advertising for careers in doing peace and arms control kind of issues. That's where I found out about the fellowship, applied for the fellowship, and received that. So I moved to Washington in January 1990, and I've never looked back. I started in the non-governmental world. So as a fellow, I worked for 6 months with an international NGO called the British American Security Information Council. Then I stayed in the field and worked for a think tank called the Center for Defense Information, and did that for 7 years and 7 days. And I left when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, if you remember way back then. But I was an analyst there, and I also got a chance to write for a television program that we did that aired nationwide on PBS. So I got to be very creative. Then I also developed a lot of contacts and a lot of experience, and then I got a job in the federal government. But Ripon really served me incredibly well, both in starting me out, putting me on the path for this, through the fellowship, through this whole experience, but also giving me the tools and help sharpening those tools that has enabled me to continue to grow in that profession and advance. Tools like being able to think critically, as Dina mentioned, being able to think and analyze things from a variety of approaches and in an interdisciplinary way. Some of my favorite classes at Ripon were Doug Northrop's interdisciplinary classes my freshman year. I wish they were offered again. They were great. But being able to put all these different disciplines together and think about that, being able to put yourself in other people's shoes, other cultures' shoes, and what historical influences, what cultural influences, what things politically are influencing them to think in a certain way. And then also the ability to write quickly, to write clearly, knowledgeably, and appropriate to the situation. I remember at Ripon thinking, I'm writing so many papers, but now I write a paper a day, at least. Sometimes they're one-pagers, and those can be oftentimes more difficult. Sometimes they're, policy options, and I've had things that go all the way up to the top. So being able to do that's been critical. And then also the music stuff, so it's really cool. A lot of us have a music background. I wanted to be able to be more knowledgeable in something that I loved doing, and that's been very appropriate in real life. One of the choirs in which I sing tours internationally. So I've sung in 14 different countries, which brings my total of countries to 35. I've been to every continent except Antarctica, and that's on my bucket list. So someday I'll get there.
Maybe not too many singing opportunities, though, in Antarctica, right?
I will find one. When there's a will, there's a way. But kind of building on one point you made, and that is, as I was thinking about this panel, too, on return on investment, I remembered back to, way back, when I'm a senior in high school, getting the phone call saying you're admitted to Ripon. And then the phone call saying you got this scholarship. Then the next day, you got another scholarship. And absent those kind of scholarships and that kind of financial aid, there's no way I could have been here. So, a big thank you to all those who've contributed to Ripon so generously and who continue to do that and help make these kind of experiences possible for everybody.
Thank you. Please, Dina.
I didn't have a chance to kind of build on the international side and say, well, investment management, what in the world does investment management have to do with international relations? two seemingly very different things. But almost every place where you work, if it's relatively large, you're going to have dealings with non-US entities. Whether you're a private company, public company, for-profit, not-for-profit, especially in this day and age. It really, local is global now. And when I think about my days at Wellington Management Company, we started out as a local investment firm. Our clients were all US based. But if you're going to grow, you have to look beyond your own borders. And if you look up beyond your own borders, the only way you're going to be successful is if you understand those countries, those cultures, those political processes of the countries that you're accessing. So when I was at Wellington, we were one of the first US-based firms that created an Islamic investment fund that was compliant with the laws of Sharia. We were one of the first investment firms to access the Chinese market, and one of the first investment firms to access the Japanese, US firms to access the Japanese markets. To be successful, you really have to understand the countries and the differences in those countries when you're working with them. And the liberal arts background that I had here, I think it gives you that openness to be willing to say their way of doing things isn't our way of doing things, so we better understand what it is, and then we can move forward. Because initially I was struggling, how in the world am I going to make this connection? And then I did think about the successes that we have had in the international arena, and almost all of the top people at Wellington actually came from liberal arts institutions, not from technical institutions.
Okay, let's open it up to all of you in the audience for questions. You can address to all four or to a specific person. So please. Yes, why don't you stand up and tell us who you are, where you're from, what you're studying if you're a student.
I'm Christina Mooney, I'm a senior and I'm an art history student. And I have this problem where I don't know how to get from after graduation to what I want to be when I grow up. And I know that like social networking is paramount to this. And I'm asking for advice on how to mingle with people in order to develop my career. So, any advice?
Well, I'll take a first shot at it, since I spent 40 years in technology. One of the things that the technology has allowed us to do, certainly in the social media, is expand the borders under which you're going to communicate and collaborate to being a worldwide audience. And certainly all of the tools and technologies that you're familiar with in Facebook and Twitter and blogging and things of that nature are all available to you, and will expand your borders beyond that of Wisconsin or your friends here at Ripon. One of the things for me has to do with kind of this curiosity. Dina touched on it by this idea of lifelong learning. For me, it was more about curiosity. And as you become curious and as you explore things in the social networking areas, you'll find friends, ideas, concepts that will shape your thinking, how you approach your career. Now, one of the things that I would suggest to you is goal setting. And when I kind of set my goals after Ripon, I set them in terms of how much money I'd like to make. And I kept moving that forward and forward. And actually, part of my return on investment is from the day I left Ripon to today, my financial well-being has grown 25-fold. The reality is that also my curiosity has fed interests and new things. And I started out in chemistry and became fascinated by technology. And I spent 40 years in tech. Not all the same kind of technology, but my career just continued to advance as a result of being curious and continuing to set goals. Now, some of those goals for me was where do I want to live? How do I want to move from where I am to where I want to be in the future? And I just continue to have the tenacity of a badger to just kind of keep chewing through that and not allow impediments to get in my way.
How about tenacity of a red
organizations-
hawk, though, Scott?
Yeah.
Tenacity of a red hawk.
I have something to add to that. That's a little bit more ethereal, a little bit intangible. But there's a quote by a famous academic, Joseph Campbell, that talks about when you start getting into the field of your bliss, when you start getting into the area of your life that you love and you are passionate for and you care about, you're going to start meeting other people in those fields. So if you're passionate about art history or mathematics or whatever it might be, you start going down those trails and it's going to lead you down a rabbit hole where you're going to meet people and meet people and meet people, and doors are going to be open for you. For example, when I was in Korea for a year and a half, I was there to teach kindergartners and elementary school students English. But also, everyone sort of got wind of while I was there that I love to write. I'm a writer. This is where my heart is. And I met someone who eventually hired me to write a book for their school and actually has hired me to write a whole series of books for his school. So this is sort of like coincidental in a way, but in another way, it's what I love. So you start meeting these other people and you find your way through everything.
A couple other practical things, and that it partially depends, Christine, on what kinds of things you want to do. But one thing I do is I'd go see Tom in career development and see what alumni he can put you in contact with that are already doing those kind of things or in those fields. Then, talk to those folks. We love to talk to you guys. See if there are any folks on LinkedIn that have that Ripon connection that are also in that field and can help further connect you. Depending on what field you want to go into, Google to see if there are associations. There's associations for everything, it seems. See if there are any that fit what you're interested in or interested in exploring. If it's an art kind of thing, maybe check out what galleries have, little receptions and do some schmoozing there, bring cards. So kind of, finding people with those like interests that have those kinds of, you already have a built-in connection with the whole Ripon family. So I would start there.
Good. Another question. Please, Kevin.
My name is Kevin Whitehair, and I'm a sophomore, and I'm also an art history major, and I'm also an anthropology major. And there's this culture in America of useless degrees, and we constantly read about how an anthro major or an art history major or a theater major is a useless degree. And one of my philosophies is that you can try to make your degree work for you, but of course that's only words. So what's your advice for how to make a degree really work out for you after you get out of college?
That's horse hockey. And I read those same articles. There aren't any useless degrees, and a Ripon College education is a opportunity to kind of hone your problem-solving skills, your communication skills, both verbally and written. It gives you an interdisciplinary view of the world. It gives you an ethical compass under which to look at things. Those are not useless things. They're extraordinarily valuable things, both in your personal life and in your business career. Oddly enough, I apply things that I learned in the chemistry department and biology department and the psych department almost every day. Even though I'm not a practicing chemist, I use them every day. I wish Mary Avery was here when I was here. I would have, because right now I'm starting up my own business and it's entrepreneurial spirit 101, right? And those are all things that I learned here at Ripon that actually created an ROI for my career and my life.
I absolutely agree with Scott, but in this day and age, it's a very competitive marketplace. And given the economic situation, getting the job of your dreams is going to be extremely difficult. Depending on what area you want to go in, you may have to get a second degree. In the investment industry, it would be very, very difficult to do what I did, to start at the bottom and work your way up. I started as a typist. The mailroom was a little bit lower than my job. And these opportunities are extremely difficult to get today unless you go for a smaller firm. And that's if you know what you want to do. I didn't have a clue when I graduated from college. But when I was in school, it was not career-oriented. It was oriented towards getting an education. And the one thing that you thought about after Ripon was whether or not you wanted to go to graduate school. You know, get a doctorate in philosophy, get a doctorate in some academic area. But this whole focus on getting a job in industry just wasn't there. So I feel for all the young people today. But I would not allow yourself to buy into a degree that is worthless. A degree from Ripon College will never be worthless, no matter what you end up doing in your life.
And just to add one thing, I think there's, first of all, there's a difference between training and education. And there's a lot of, I think, programs out there that are focused on training to get you X job. And that may work very well in those fields. But in education, I think, irrespective of what you major in, will serve you well over the long haul. I totally agree with the points these guys made. Would add that, a key thing is doing something and majoring in something you love and are passionate about. If you are passionate about something, I think you will succeed in it. If you're taking, whatever degree because, this is the one they say I should take to succeed, I think your chances are less likely. So I would encourage you to study what you like, but develop a lot of skills. Because it's not so much the degree that really helps advance you, but the skills that you learn and can apply to a wide variety of things.
Yeah, let me add one more thing. One of the things that we're all experiencing is rampant change. Socially, politically, technologically, interpersonally, in the way we interact with people. The half-life of knowing what button to push vocationally is really, really short. The half-life of knowing how to solve problems and how to communicate and collaborate is forever. It becomes a snowballing effect. It becomes synergistic for your entire career. It's not just about what to do, it's why you do it. Things of that nature.
Good. Let's go back to your questions. Please.
I'm Sarah Murphy. I'm a politics major, and I have minors in communication and art history, and I'm a senior. My question kind of goes to Mr. Dix about your Greek life thing, and then kind of all of you as well. As someone who's been really active in our Greek community, and I've heard both ways, put it on your resume if you've had leadership positions, or don't put it on your resume, absolutely do not put it on your resume. Which way do you guys kind of feel? Because in talking to career people and non-career people and Greek people and non-Greek people, it goes completely either direction, and I don't know which way to go.
Well, one of the workshops I run is in situational leadership, so if I was actually interviewing for a job with a Merriman, I wouldn't tell them I was a Phi Delta. But in general, I look back very fondly and with great value in my Greek experiences. Part of it because it teaches you about how to get along with people who even though you're all brothers, some of them are bigger jerks than others, right? And it teaches you how to interact with people in a bonded setting that you'll find in the workplace. It teaches you about teamwork, teaches you about collaboration. It's really hard to get a bunch of type A personality jocks in a room and get us to build a float or an ice sculpture, right? I mean, and those are really good skills to have when you enter the workforce. It's about teaming, about collaboration, about dealing with people in ways that you might normally not be able to do had you not availed yourself of either the Ripon experience or Greek life. Yes, I did. Proudly, actually.
Especially if you have shown leadership in it, that's a good thing to show.
I also was involved in Greek life here and had leadership positions. I always have put it on my resume. I've never had an employer ask about it, but I think showing the leadership is not going to hurt you at all.
Okay, next question. I saw somebody's hand up in the back over there before. Oh, there's one over here. Michelle.
Question, I'm Michelle, with the Associate Registrar. It's really neat that each of you were passionate about your majors. I'm not sure that all of our students or all of our students are passionate about the content of their majors. And so I don't know if you're the right group of folks to help them. But what if there are seniors among us and juniors that they end up majoring in an area, but it doesn't actually turn out to be something they're passionate about in the common use of popular use of that?
Everyone has something.
Yeah, everybody wants to talk about this because we're passionate about the idea as well. I think, Michelle, that even if you're not passionate anymore about your major, perhaps you've been doing it for so long you're going, oh man, my senior sem has taken up my entire life and maybe I want to do something else. But I think it's find what you are passionate in. Maybe it's not what your major was, but maybe it's something else. Maybe you took a Brian Smith class on religion and ethics, and you want to go down more that path. Find what really, I think, interests you and compels you, because irrespective, the skills you picked up in those majors, will help you. Because you're taking a lot of other classes beyond your major, so don't discount them.
So I was a philosophy major. And, by my senior year, I didn't want to go on and get a PhD in philosophy. I had had enough, but I had learned so much that's what I took out. I don't believe every single senior at Ripon College knows what their ultimate passion is going to be. I'm a believer that you continue to grow. And maybe, at 20, you know exactly the path you're going to take. I would be very surprised if the path you think you're going to take is the one that you end up taking. So the passion, it's the passion to learn, the passion to be curious, the passion to be willing to change and grow. That is the important thing, not the subject matter. The subject matter, in my mind, is irrelevant sometimes. It's what you teach your mind to do and be able to do that's going to make a difference in your life long term.
Yeah, I think part of it has to do with how you apply where you are. By the standards of Ripon College science community, I'm a pretty punk chemist, right? And the reality is that, but I saw my first shark in 1968. And I spent time studying blood chemistries in sharks, shark behavior, things of that. Still to this day, I still follow the literature, even though I'm not even a practicing shark researcher. I'm an amateur. The reality is that those things I applied, and I found my passion. I found things that I enjoyed. I found out I was good at business. I went out and picked up a couple of executive MBAs at Harvard and Babson along the way, later on in my career. And I'm with Dina. You never know quite where the journey's going to take you. What Ripon College is doing is preparing you for the journey. Preparing you and giving you the tools necessary to be able to adapt, change, learn, assimilate, solve problems, things of that nature.
I'd also, to that Ripon College senior add, give yourself some time. It's okay if you don't know. let yourself explore different avenues. And one thing that I found really fascinating about when I lived in Korea was that there was all sorts of expats there from different countries, native English-speaking countries, so US, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa. What we all had in common is that we were all teaching English as a profession full-time, either in public or private schools. But also, I tended to meet a whole lot of people there who were teaching, yes, but also doing all these other really cool things. So when I went abroad, it gave me this, when I went abroad professionally, it gave me this opportunity to explore a lot of different avenues that I really probably wouldn't have done if I had stayed put where I was. For example, I was in a production of the Vagina Monologues. My husband was in a sketch comedy show. We wouldn't have done those things. I met artists and I met writers and I met just all sorts of different people who were kind of exploring all these different avenues while they were actually working full-time as well. And that was kind of the benefit of going abroad, is that we were very, very much free to go down those paths that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
Good. On to our next question. Yes, in the back.
I'm Rosette Reynolds. I'm a nonprofit business management major, and I was wondering, kind of in relation to your comment about how competitive the marketplace is right now, what are some different traits that you look for or that really help a new hire stand out?
During my career, I've probably hired 500-600 people in my life, and oftentimes my favorite interviewing technique is what's classified as a behavioral interview, and I try and pose questions that are challenging but also force you to give examples of how you've been able to demonstrate a specific skill that I'm looking for or I feel is required in order to fill the competency of the job I'm trying to fill to. And the reality is that those tools, if you break your career down into base skills, and again, going back to this idea, the half-life of knowledge is fleeting in some disciplines. You have to break it down into some things that are really kind of important around integrity, tenacity, problem-solving, communications, collaboration, things of that nature, and then you apply those situationally to the kind of interview or the kind of job that you're actually looking for. The other advice I could give you with regard to job searching and interviewing and things of that nature is that be careful at trying to represent yourself in ways that aren't really you. The best person that you do is you, right? So you need to be able to figure out how you're going to represent what you know and your approach to certain tasks that way. And you've got all the base tools, every one of you. Come out of this institution, whether you come out with a C or whether you come out magna cum laude, you're still going to have this base set of skills that you're going to be able to apply in the marketplace. I hope that helps.
I also did a considerable amount of hiring, and the one thing, there were a couple of things that I was always looking for. One was curiosity. You know, how interested and interesting is this person? I also probed on work habits and the willingness to always do more than the task at hand, no matter what the job was. And I do think one of the things that allowed me to be so successful, over and beyond the luck of kind of landing in an industry that was so wonderful, was that I always tried to work harder and smarter than the person I was working for. So if that person worked 8:30 to 5, I worked 8 to 5:30. I was there before my boss got in. I was there when my boss left, no matter what level I was at, from being a secretary all the way up to heading huge departments. Because then the only person above me was the managing director, and he sat right next to me. I couldn't work longer than he did, though. Never could. But I always look for the curiosity, tenacity, and work habits. But curiosity was always, and it didn't matter what you were curious about. It just showed me kind of where your mind was at.
I'll give you one other thought, and that is, at Ripon, if you're a senior, you spent the last 4 years proving to your professors your intellect and your intent to learn based on how well you answered questions. Once you leave this institution, you're going to prove your intent and your intellect to potential employers and to your employers by how well you asked questions. And if I think back on the people that I've hired that have been very successful, they asked me great questions during the interview. They'd done their homework. They had thought the problem through enough, and to Dina's point, they were curious enough about the job they were interviewing for that they asked great questions. And that's going to be a headset shift for most of you, because you've been in the business of answering questions heretofore.
I actually worked at a nonprofit for a couple of years, and I got to do some hiring while I was there. And what I was looking for was communication skills, and especially in the field I was with, compassion and empathy for others' situations. So getting to know other people's lifestyles and where they come from was really important. That I saw that in a candidate. But I also want to add that the company I work for now has a very rigorous screening process. They hire something like less than 0.5% of the applicants they have. And what they look for is your ability to learn, and your ability to learn really quick. So you're in luck because you've learned how to do that here at Ripon. And I took all these tests just measuring how fast I could learn and if I could think critically. So.
Good. Another question from the audience. Please.
How of you have raised the issue that connects back to the speech I know at least one of you heard yesterday about emphatic understanding. Does your Ripon College education help you to achieve emphatic understanding?
Just by way of background, for those of you, yesterday there was a marvelous speech by a professor from Indiana University on the question of empathy in the modern world, and this is where Doug Northrop's question, I think, is coming from. And I know, Dina, you were there.
I would say absolutely. And I think that a liberal arts education should lead to that, in my mind. And I would say absolutely.
One of the things that I've noticed in my short lifetime is one of the things that's changed from my early days to today is we seem to be less considerate as a society. We've lost some of the standard practices under which we all used to be able to interact with each other as human beings. Things have been, everybody's offended at everything, both politically and otherwise. And a lot of the things that I was commenting about life in the house, right? Sometimes you have to, learn how to get along with others, right? You have to learn how to be empathetic and understand. And I think Ripon helps a lot at that. I really do.
Go ahead. I think empathy is critical, especially if you're doing anything in the international world. It's important just in interpersonal relations. I mean, just to be able to understand where is this person coming from, what's driving them, what's their motivation, what's kind of behind it all. And that works irrespective of where you are or what field you're in, but in the international world, it is critical. You're working with folks who may have a completely different perspective than you. And for example, I work a lot with the government of Pakistan and the government of India. Very different cultures, very different kinds of backgrounds, some historical issues. And I find that the greatest thing that helps me in doing my work with India and with Pakistan is not the, what is my rank? It's not what is my gender. It's not who do I know. It really comes to, do I understand and where they're coming from? Not that I agree, but do I understand what they're coming from? Do I then convey that to them? So do they get it, that I get them? And then, do I actually follow through on the things that I try to do? But that understanding, I think, is absolutely essential.
Okay, any other questions from the audience? Let me ask maybe, Marty. Oh, I'm sorry, not next to Marty. Can't see. John.
You're right on with empathy, but say you support the person, you sign up with them, I'm looking at the bottom line. I'm not sensitive with my employees. Neither with them. They haven't picked it up maybe. How do we do it? How do we become empathetic? What? How do you become empathetic? You're saying support, but I run into a lot of people in business that I'm
So you're asking how you can become empathetic yourself, or how you work with an employer?
One of the great oddities in the world of selling is that most salespeople think they make their living with their mouth and their golden throat. The reality is that you make your living by 2 ears and you listen. And one of the workshops that is one of my more popular ones is on listening skills. And one of the techniques in listening is to suspend judgment. How many times have you actually somebody started talking to you, and you already decided that you disagree with them, and you decided how you're going to throw them under the bus before they're even finished talking? The reality is that by being a good listener improves your empathy. And being empathetic is an important part of interpersonal dynamics, for sure. But for me, learning how to be an active listener, being a good listener, helps a lot with that. The other thing is, we all have distinct personalities, right? And there's about 10 different ways to assess different people's personality. And part of the success, people who have been successful in business at least, is not so much what their base personality type is, but how flexible they are in being able to give the person they're interacting with what they need in order to be able to conduct business at kind of this adult to adult level. And part of that's being a good listener and suspending judgment before you actually say anything or open your mouth. Clearly. I mean, the part of this workshop is about asking high impact questions that elicit people to actually expose to you as much information as they're willing to share. And, being empathetic about it, you always have time to form a hypothesis and react. You don't necessarily always have a lot of time to listen well. And it's really an important characteristic for business people interacting with each other.
Let me try and ask a concluding question, and I'd like all of you to sum up. And this is particularly aimed for people who are seniors in college right now, who will be going out on a job market that is really tough, right? There's no secret here. It is a tough job market. And what I want you all to do is give a pep talk, and here's how, though, I want you to think about it in a way, because this is going to be very real for those of you who are seniors in the audience right now. It's November of next year, okay? You've graduated in May and it was marvelous and it was a bright sunny day and your family was here and you were happy, and maybe in the summertime you had a job that was something that you enjoyed doing at a summer camp, or something that you'd done while you had been between high school and college or during college. But now it's fall and it's starting to get cold and you still don't have a job and you're still looking out there for what it is you want to do. What do you all say to that person who's doing all these things that you've suggested that they do? They're empathetic, they're asking questions, they're networking, they're really trying hard, but just not coming. What do you say to them?
By the way, I delegate really, really well.
It's tough. And, you know, my advice, you know, I was willing to do anything to get a job. I needed a job. And being a secretary, you know, well, when I graduated from college, I could not get a job as a trainee anywhere. Those were boys' jobs, and I was a girl. And I was a girl with a philosophy degree, you know, to add to it. So I got a job as a secretary. I do believe that work works. It doesn't matter, really, you know, what you do at the beginning. It does matter that you have a job that's more than flipping burgers at Burger King. So you have this idea of where you want to end up, but I think it's more important to just get a job and not try. You know, I hear some people, you know, a lot of people are taking business courses because they think that's going to help them get a job. I look for people who had a liberal arts degree, not a business degree. A liberal arts degree is much, much better. But I would say don't worry about what it is, as long as it's close to the field that you're going to be in, because eventually hard work will win out and it will be okay.
First, I'd tell you that looking for a job is a full-time job, all right? And so never give up on that. I would also tell you that one part of social media and that doesn't work very well, you can waste hours and hours of your day following monster.com and chasing the bulletin boards of job opportunities. That ain't gonna work. It's about networking. It's about who you know. It's about tapping into the alumni of Ripon College. It's using things like LinkedIn, not Facebook, to get yourself a job, right? And find out what's out there and work that side of the marketing dynamic, not so much chasing paper. The other thing I would suggest to kind of build on what Dina said is go do something. Go volunteer. Go work and do some charitable work, and eventually get to the point where you can lead something. Even if it's a small committee, a task force. Go find a problem that needs to get fixed and go fix it. Even if you don't get paid for it, because those are the things that you put on your resume that will distinguish you farther in the future going forward. Even if you don't have a job, go find something to do and do it well.
Yeah, I want to echo exactly what they said, actually, because after I finished my graduate degree even, oh, great, I have these 2 degrees. Oh, jobs are really tough. So I actually, too, started as a receptionist part-time, but that was okay. It didn't matter because I was a receptionist part-time at a literacy nonprofit, and that's where I wanted to be. And it didn't matter what I was doing as long as I was there. So I started there, and I worked really hard. And, you know, 6 months later, I'm basically second in command running the office. So get started somewhere in that area that you want to be. And it's not about, you might say, oh, that's lowering what I think I should be doing. It doesn't matter because you're going to climb your way back to where you want to be.
It's hard to figure out what to say after all these good comments. I would second everything that you've said. I would just kind of expand on one or two thoughts, and that is find something. I mean, there's always a temp agency. That's what I actually ended up doing after I left Ripon. I did some work through a temp agency as a receptionist. And by the time 3 months later, they were trying to hire me for real to be like an assistant manager and all this stuff. But go somewhere, do something, acquire more skills, keep developing those contacts. And the hard work does pay off. People tend to hire folks who they know fit well in their organization, who they know they can count on to get stuff done. Whatever it takes to kind of get started in those kind of positions, and volunteering is a fabulous way to do it. Or get an internship, whether it's paid or unpaid. I know it's difficult, but those kind of internships oftentimes will turn into real jobs there or elsewhere. So keep at it. It's difficult work, but it does pay off, and you can do great things with a Ripon education.
Please join me in a round of applause for our 4 panelists. We hope you'll join us for other events going on this weekend, including this afternoon, where we're going to be doing a community volunteer project here on the Commons, starting from 1 to 3. Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you soon.